dulcet tones of Beethoven playing his Piano Sonata number 12. This is Dorico, and this is Daniel Spreadbury from Steinberg, and we're having a kind of preview and just a chat about what Dorico actually gives you the ability to do, because it's a scoring program that's sort of in the making, right?
In the making, been in the making for best part of 4 years now, by a team that Steinberg picked up. We used to work together on other scoring software in the past, and we're now approaching the first release. And
so you must have been working. You must have been working on scoring as a focus for a long time, because I mean, I guess a number of years before that. So.
Yeah, pretty much since my college days. I studied music at college, and then pretty much sort of fell into it straight afterwards, and been very lucky to be working on it all this time.
So. What is it about this approach to scoring software that is different from other ones out there? I mean, what is it that you're kind of hoping to offer as the ultimate, selling point?
I think really it's that it thinks about music a different way. So it thinks about music a different way in terms of how you input the music, in terms of how the music is represented internally, and in terms of what you can then do with the music as you're working on your project. Also, it looks beautiful. Both the application itself and also the music inside the application is just really beautiful and very much in the keeping with the sort of centuries-old tradition of music engraving.
Yeah, I mean, the name comes from an ancient engraver from Italian, right?
That's right, a Roman chap from the 16th century,
right.
Valerio Dorico, who was one of the first typographia, as they were called, and we are very serious about maintaining that tradition of the craft of music engraving. It's one of those things where a musician will look at a page of music and they won't even necessarily be able to articulate why it is easier or not easy to read. And there's hundreds of little details that are working together, not only about how the music is actually laid out, but also the exact spacing of things, the balance of the cymbals, the white balance of the music versus the paper, the sizes of everything.
Right, it's a fine art.
It's a fine art.
So I mean, this is obviously at the top end. This is almost like desktop publishing for the music publisher who wants absolute control, and then further down the scale to sort of more mortals like myself, perhaps, who's not really musically adept. I mean, are we talking Playback engine? Are we able to compose directly into the score? I mean, because that's a new thing, right?
Yeah, so I think, mere mortals, as you put it, people who aren't necessarily so interested in the high-end engraving side of things. The nice thing about Dorico is it does so much of it for you that you can just have confidence in the program doing the right thing. And so that's not only how the music is laid out, but also when you're playing your music in from a MIDI keyboard in step time, or you're typing it in with a computer keyboard, that the music is actually going to be notated in a way that makes it clear for a musician to play it. As I say, it's not just about the spacing, it's also about how the notes are actually split up.
So like how it adapts the rhythms and things, the intent of the playing.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's always been something that's very difficult. So there's actually an engine that's kind of interpreting that and this is the best way to represent that. That sounds like quite a sort of smart bit of algorithmic work.
It's exactly algorithmic work, exactly. So basically, the music theory, we know about simple time signatures like 4/4, compound time signatures like 6/8, 3/8, those sorts of things, and how notes should be sort of represented inside those time signatures is kind of one of these things that we all learn when we're learning music theory as kids and so on. And there are whole books written on it. It's a very deep subject. But what Dorico allows you to do is basically give it pretty much any rhythm, no matter how complicated it is, no matter how short the notes are, no matter what pattern they form in. And Dorico will follow these rules to make sure that the music is actually easy to read for the musician. I mean, of course, if the rhythm's very complicated, you're not necessarily going to make it guarantee it that the musician's not going to make a mistake, but at least you'll know that following the rules of how you show the beat divisions and subdivisions, that everything's going to be laid out nicely. And even better, it actually adapts as you change the music yourself. So if you're writing music into Dorico...
Right, so I mean, is this in write mode? Or?
Yeah, so we're in write mode, which is where you actually input the music and you can, add other markings apart from the notes and so on. So we'll probably just wreck a bit of Beethoven briefly. For example, let's make these notes dotted. It does change the rhythm like that. You see the slur adapts and everything. If I actually wanted to, I mean, this is committing a crime against Beethoven, but let's insert some more notes here. So I just press I for insert mode. That's actually, seems like a very simple thing, but other scoring programs can't do it. If you were to start typing in notes here, and you can see that Dorico actually shuffles everything along by that semiquaver or 16th note that I just typed in. And I can undo that as well just as easily just by deleting them out again. That in itself, just the ability to just type notes in and have everything move along, and to, for example, another thing I can do, for example, is select these notes in this bar here and then I can just double their duration just with a single key press. Everything else shuffles along as well. So
can you cut and paste in entire bars as well?
Sure,
so
of course,
bar.
yeah. So and you can just in insert mode, you can just press R, and that repeats a copy of the bar after
So that's
itself.
almost kind of like dealing with sort of MIDI in the DAW. You've got much more flexibility there, as I understand it.
Exactly. I think you're exactly right. And I think that users of scoring software haven't had the sort of flexibility that the DAW gives you in terms of MIDI editing and in terms of making changes big and small to either entire tracks or to regions of tracks. And what we're trying to do with Dorico, because it does under the hood, it thinks about music in a very MIDI-like way. It's not actually MIDI because it doesn't store notes in ticks. It stores them in crotchets and fractions of crotchets and so on, rather than actual ticks. But the same principle is there. You know, the music is not actually divided up into bars. It's not actually that all of these notes that you can see here that are shown as minims or half notes and crotchets or quarter notes, is actually they are stored as notes that are a minim long or a crotchet long.
Which depends on the tempo, depends on the
and depends on where they are in the bar.
Right.
And then if it turned out that, for example, if we were to insert, in fact, it probably, because this is an XML file that's been imported, so it actually wouldn't behave quite the same way as if I typed it in myself. But basically, you'd insert a crotchet before that minim. Normally, depending on what else is going on, if it was an obvious syncopated rhythm, then you would show it as a minim. But in lots of other circumstances, you might choose to show it as a crotchet.
These are rules that Dorico
understands itself. And of course you can tweak them. There's a huge set of options in there that allow you to influence all of these behaviours.
Okay, so I mean this sounds like, for people who really know their stuff, they can get this sort of beautiful engraved quality, DTP quality output. What about for sort of mere mortals or jobbing musicians? I mean, where does this fit into their workflow?
So I think that all of that stuff being there hopefully just gives those guys the confidence that it will do the right thing for them. And that's really the idea. If you are that jobbing musician, you need to get something on the stand for somebody to play. All you simply have to do is type it in write mode. You may never even need to touch engrave mode to actually do any graphical tweaking, because the layout engines are smart enough, the way the music is interpreted is smart enough.
Someone will be able to read it pretty much.
Absolutely.
And also, I mean, has it got a playback? It's got a playback.
It has got
we did
playback
hear the
mode.
music there, so
yeah, exactly. And here, in fact, in play mode, you can see that it actually has, effectively a little arrange window like you would see it in a DAW.
Right, so that's a key editor, effectively.
Exactly, as a key editor. And the way that this is a bit sort of bare bones right now, but as we develop the software post-release, there'll be all sorts of functionality you can do in here. For example, being able to edit the lengths of notes and things in here, possibly even write new notes in, which won't affect the notation, but will affect the playback. So if, for example, you were trying to get a particular performance that played up to the strength of a specific orchestral sound library or particular instrument that needed notes to be of a particular duration in order to trigger a particular patch, or maybe they have to be above a certain velocity level or whatever it might be. Of course, in a sequencer, it's trivial to do that, but in another scoring program, you either find yourself hiding extra notes or putting in little text commands and so on. What we tried to do really with Dorico is provide tools in each mode.
That's a very familiar kind of...
Exactly.
And I noticed the VST instruments here.
Exactly, yeah.
So we can assign VST instruments to each of the kind of voices or staves?
That's right. So Dorico does it automatically for Halion. So it comes with Halion Sonic SE, including its factory content and also the whole of Halion Symphonic Orchestra, which is, a reasonably good orchestra. It's a bit old now compared to some of the newer ones on the market.
Lightweight, presumably.
Not too heavyweight, certainly. Perhaps not the lightest weight, but certainly won't require a huge new computer to run.
So does that mean you could go, I want a flute, and Dorico will know and create a flute stave?
Exactly, and because it uses VST expression maps, you can also then write certain playing techniques like articulations and so on. It automatically switches to those things, just like in Cubase when you put the markings in the score.
And so does that mean when you come to print from the score, talking about transpositions for like trumpets and stuff, where the novice like me would just go, that's the notes, print them out, the guy will know what to do, but actually it means nothing if he's got a B flat trumpet and
Exactly. Now all of the intelligence about how the instruments actually work is all built into Dorico. So things like what range they can play, if they're transposing, all the transposition is
as long as it knows what instrument it is.
As long as you tell it, and in fact telling it what instrument you're writing for. So let's add a trumpet to this piano sonata. We'll add a player. It's actually a human being who has the instrument rather than the instrument itself. Then you can see all the categories of instruments there. We'll just choose a trumpet, and then actually you can choose between the different transpositions. So if you want a piccolo trumpet in D or a regular trumpet in B flat, it knows about the differences between them. So we simply add that. It's actually actually going to add it underneath the piano, which is maybe not the right place for it, but we can then simply drag him above in the setup panel and it changes.
Right, okay.
And then if we go into here, you can see that the score is in concert pitch because it's for piano. Piano is not a transposing instrument. But then we go into transpose pitch, you can see that the trumpet now gives the correct key signature, and you know that when you print the trumpet part out, by default it's going to be transposed.
So, yeah,
and it's going to work.
Because I mean, I imagine in a lot of instances, I'm thinking a simple process for someone like me who might have, got a piece of music that is being paid for. Somebody said, we'd really like you to use a real string quartet or whatever, and I'll just go, yeah, that sounds great, and then assume when I turn up with the music it's all right. It's not all right. It needs to be kind of tinkered with.
That's right. And I think that, Dorico doesn't necessarily solve all of the arranging problems that you might have, although it provides useful tools to allow you to quickly make that arrangement. It won't necessarily tell you, well, you can't have the viola going below the cello there, you won't hear the detail or whatever. But it will at least give you really, really clear parts, and you know that it's going to be notated properly, laid out properly, all the transpositions will be right, all the information is going to be there that those musicians are going to need.
And I guess the thing is with something like this is if you're working, I mean, modern working is probably paper free, so people might be using an iPad, so you just, here's the latest score in my Dropbox folder, come and grab it, there you've got it.
And it's very, very easy to take the material you've made in Dorico and export it either to graphics. You can print, of course, it's got very nice support for printing, including if you were doing a big set of parts for an orchestra or something and you need to have some parts printed on sort of A3 landscape and some things printed as booklets, and it can do all the duplexing. You can literally set it up, go off and have a cup of coffee, and then come back, pick up the paper off the printer and fold it up. But if you are wanting to make PDFs and things or email things, you simply, instead of printing to a printer, you print to the graphics driver instead. Choose either PDF, it can also do things like PNG for the web or even SVG for the web, and then you can simply email them, PDFs are titchy, so you can email them or like you say, throw them in your Dropbox, and then very, very easy to get the latest
So
version.
you were talking about the real-time input in terms of step input. I mean, are we ever going to see a point where you'd be able to play stuff in and it, I mean, obviously there's got to be some time where it takes to process this, but you could actually play in real time into something like Dorico and you end up with, the score kind of basically working itself out in front of your very eyes.
Yeah, well, indeed. Yeah. So step input is going to be in the very first version, and real-time input will come in an update. So the way that we're approaching the release is that we've kind of got a critical mass of features that are going to be useful for hopefully a broad range of musicians, but there are going to be some things missing that some of the other programs don't have. I think that Dorico takes a unique approach to scoring, and it shows a new workflow and a new way of approaching producing printed scores. The unique features in note input, the unique features in page layout that we've barely even touched on, the fact that it has the play mode with the dedicated sort of event editor and proper VST handling and so on. All of these things really set it in the direction of becoming a tool that will hopefully be useful to a wide range of musicians. But at the same time, it is also missing some areas of notation that some musicians will need. For example, guitar notation is basically non-existent in the first version.
But those are the sort of things that are, presumably relatively straightforward to add in. It's just hours.
So, exactly. We've basically built the foundation now for what we feel will become a really capable tool across every area of music rather than just the areas that it supports right now. And so the plan after the initial release is that we will then do a series of updates that address the most important sort of missing areas.
Are you going to be taking input from that? Is that the idea to kind of like, so if somebody says, actually, you get enough people say, I want guitar tab or I want rhythm or drum, whatever, then those are the things you'll prioritise.
So we're very, very kind of available to people, and we want musicians who are going to buy Dorico and use Dorico to come to us. They can come to us through our forum on the Steinberg website. I've been blogging about the development of Dorico for best part of the whole period, basically. And that's been a wonderful experience, and we've had so much feedback from musicians. And it's actually very exciting to get to the point where they can use the software for themselves. But they will find things that they would like it to do that it can't yet do. And so we invite them to talk to us about it and tell us how they would like to see the program develop, because we are absolutely committed to Dorico for the long term and making sure that it really does develop into the ultimate tool for producing scores.
Right. Well, Daniel, thank you so much for showing us. I mean, this is, how far are we away? I'm guessing you're this year, so...
That's right, fourth quarter of the year, so there'll be some more news coming in the next few weeks, so keep your eyes peeled.
Okay. Daniel, thanks very much for showing us what Dorico has to offer. That's it for this time. Please do subscribe to the channel, and if you want to find out more about what Steinberg and Dorico are doing, there will be links dotted about the screen and also in the show notes. See you next time.